So here we are back at the recycling again on a very typically Scottish day, but the recycling still needs to continue. I often think that when you have a sample of a whisky, like a friend's giving you a sample, or a bar pour, or maybe something that you've bought online as a tester or something like that, that's a lot like a first date. It's you trying to work out whether you like the whisky, whether you might like the whisky, whether you want to spend a bit more time with it. Maybe buy a full bottle and work out if you want to have a relationship or not. And of course, just like a relationship, whisky's very much the same. And as time goes on and as the level in the bottle drops, the whisky changes and the relationship changes. You get to understand all its complexities, its nuances, and how it changes with time. And then after you finish the bottle, you can work out whether you want to continue that relationship by replacing it and buying another one. So, just like last time, let's get through these 15 bottles, but before they disappear, let's kind of give them a little bit of a resume and work out whether we would continue the relationship or not. First up, Tobermory 10-year-old. This is from Burn Stewart, one of my favourite producers right now, and that's mostly because of their presentation across the board. 46.3% unchill filtered, usually with an age statement. That's exactly the kind of presentation that as whisky geeks we've been asking for. However, the Tobermory in this 10-year-old form wasn't my favourite. It was quite light, and I probably didn't connect enough with this whisky. It took me quite a long time to get through it. It wasn't bad by any manner, but it was just a little bit more difficult to enjoy. I liked this, but I'm not in a hurry to replace it again. 7.5 out of 10. Got two Bowmores here, the 12-year-old Bowmore and the 18-year-old Bowmore. You know, I know there are loads of people out there that absolutely adore Bowmore. They really, really love it. I started off quite liking it, but that's going back quite a few years. Recently, I've become a wee bit tired of it, certainly when it comes to an official bottling. This 12-year-old was really difficult to enjoy for me. The 18-year-old was much better, but still not one that I would replace again. There's a flavour in Bowmore. It's even in a blind lineup, I can pick it out, and I know when I'm sipping an official bottling of a Bowmore, it just doesn't sit very well with me, and I know the Whisky Rev, my friend, feels the same way as well. You know, there are independent Bowmores out there that are really good and quite engaging as well, but the official bottlings are just a wee bit off right now. I'm going to replace neither of these. I would give the 12-year-old a 6.5 out of 10, and I'd give the 18-year-old a 7 out of 10. That's a wee bit miserable because I know there are Bowmore fans out there right now screaming at me, but remember, this is just my opinion. I'm not going to replace these. Glenfiddich 12-year-old, the ubiquitous Glenfiddich 12-year-old, presented at 40% and available just about in every supermarket, every bar, every place you've ever been that's got whisky. This is probably sitting there, right? And that can mean that people get switched off a wee bit to it. That means that they can overlook it. This might not be the richest, most complex, most engaging whisky out there, but it's utterly solid, dependable, and the quality is always high. And I tend to love using this whisky to start my flights. I'll always have Glenfiddich 12 in the house. This deserves a solid 8 out of 10. Bullet Rye. This was the first ever rye that I purchased, and I was really surprised because anytime I'd tried a rye I didn't really like it, but this bottle I did quite enjoy. I had a chance to get to understand what rye was about a wee bit, and I did end up liking it. My brother and I got through a full bottle of this in one weekend, so we went straight out and bought another one each. From what I understand, this isn't one of the best ryes that's out there, but as I've just admitted to you, I would replace this again. This was decent and I enjoyed it. 7.5 out of 10, and it's certainly worth it when you can pick it up as cheaply as I picked this one up for. It was about £25. Decent stuff. Compass Box Hedonism. This is a blended grain whisky, and it was probably the first blended grain whisky out there to be marketed anywhere, and everybody was switched on to grain all of a sudden and realised how good grain whisky could actually be when it was crafted well. This was fantastic, and I always enjoyed a dram out of this. Very, very light. Enough complexity in there to keep you engaged over sipping a dram, but just wonderful any time of the year just to pour over a little bit of ice even and sip is a really nice flavoursome whisky. It's a little bit expensive for that purpose, pouring over ice, but still the quality is here. Now, regardless of whether this is grain, malt or otherwise, Hedonism is a great whisky, and I certainly would replace this again. 8.5 out of 10. Auchroisk, or Auchroisk, or Auchroisk, whatever you want to pronounce it. This is one of the better Flora and Faunas. I got through this remarkably quick, and I'll replace this immediately again, not least because I don't like having a hole in my Flora and Fauna collection. But this was a good whisky. I really enjoyed it, and everybody I poured it for enjoyed it as well. It was quite creamy and quite rich, and even though it's only at 43%, there was enough texture and mouthfeel there to keep you engaged all the way through. You can find out more about Flora and Fauna and the range in the video that I've done on my channel for it, and I talk about this whisky a wee bit more there as well. But this will be replaced again quickly. This was a good whisky, 8.5 out of 10. Old Pulteney. This is a 17-year-old Old Pulteney. Now, this is just about still available, but they are going to kill it off. This is a very rich whisky. It's sweet and salty and complex. There's lots and lots going on. I mean, literally, it's one of those whiskies that you can find just about something for everyone in it. It's fantastic. It's getting a bit pricey now, but what I paid for this, it was very reasonable at £75, and if you can pick it up at that money, I'd certainly buy it. But now it's getting harder to get your hands on, and the prices are creeping up because people are worried about it disappearing. Even still, it's a 9 out of 10 whisky. It's one of their best. Leadchook 10. See a previous video. This is obviously a whisky I decided that I would continue the relationship with. I love it. Broken cork. Laphroaig Cartius. This is a 2010 Cartius for the Fashil in 2010, and it took me quite a while to get through it. You can see that there's still a piece of cork floating around in there. This was a relationship that it was like somebody in your family that you kind of don't mind, but you don't really always need them around. It was enjoyable enough, but there was actually less in this for me than there was in regular official Laphroaigs, and that's bizarre because this is a cask strength expression. There's great Cartius expressions out there, really good ones with all sorts of different finishes that they bring out annually, but this one was a wee bit dull in my opinion. I picked this up the first time I was in Islay, so despite this being quite a sentimental bottle for me, I didn't love it, and I'm not in a hurry to replace it again. 7 out of 10. Another Laphroaig. Now, to contradict what I just said, this is an official bottling from Laphroaig that I'm not in a hurry to replace, and it wasn't even as good as that Cartius. This is Select. This smells like Laphroaig. It tastes a wee bit like Laphroaig on arrival, but after that it quickly falls short. There's no mouthfeel. This is quite thin. This is like a copycat Laphroaig. I know this is cheap. I know you can often pick it up on offer, but really it's worth the extra money to go for the 10-year-old or something else from Islay completely. I won't replace Laphroaig Select. Glenlivet Founder's Reserve. This is by far one of the best cooking whiskies I've ever used. Auchentoshan. This is the classic Auchentoshan, their original non-age statement that's since been replaced by the American oak. And like the American oak is like a sweeter, richer expression of this, but both are a wee bit pallid. If you're sitting there with an Auchentoshan Classic or an Auchentoshan American oak and you're really engaging with it and enjoying it, that's absolutely valid. But your whisky journey ahead is going to blow your mind. This is the most vanilla of vanilla that there is. 6.5 out of 10. An old timer. This is a Longmorn 15. I bought this at auction because I'd heard that it was utterly legendary. So just now in Longmorn you can buy a 16-year-old that's pretty decent. That replaced a Distiller's Choice, a non-age statement that was pretty awful. And that replaced a Longmorn 16 that was wonderful. And that 16 replaced this, the 15-year-old, the one that everyone talks about, the legend. I thought this was good. I'd say this was damn good. But I say that when they switched to the 16-year-old, they improved it. The 16-year-old was really, really wonderful. This was just a good, solid, dependable Speyside. And I think the reason that people are so nostalgic about this is because it used to be very, very good value. But now it's auction fodder only and quite expensive. Still, this is a decent, good quality whisky presented at 45%, and if I could come across this quite cheap, I would gladly have it again. 8.5 out of 10. Mortlach, 18-year-old. Can I just say that this was not my bottle, but I enjoyed this. I shared this with a friend of mine, and it was gifted to him from someone. This is an 18-year-old Mortlach in a 50 cl half-litre bottle for about 150 to 170 pounds. Sometimes you need to just stop and apply a bit of rational thinking before you buy a whisky. The nice bottle, the brand, the price doesn't mean a lot. It's about the value, it's about the engagement. And despite this being a fantastic whisky, this doesn't bring it, not at that money. So 7.5 out of 10, and I'm certainly not going to replace it. This is Yamazaki. This is a non-age statement Yamazaki called Distiller's Reserve. When I bought this, it was reasonable money, but even this is expensive to buy right now. And really, this is just an example of everybody going a bit crazy. There's no question that Japanese whisky, once upon a time, certainly was very, very good quality. It's suffering now because of the pressures on demand. But the prices are just ridiculous. It's bizarre to me that people are still engaging with this type of stuff. An interesting thing that happened with this one as well is that as this was open and the level went down, this whisky at only about a third full went ridiculously flat and sour. It was awful, and in fact I struggled to get through it. In the last few drams of this, we had out the back on a sunnier day than today, and we poured it over ice and enjoyed it that way. It was just about palatable. I would give this 7.5 out of 10, but the prices that it's fetching now, just stay away, and I won't begin back to Yamazaki Distiller's Reserve. Strathyla, 12-year-old. This is a distillery that's capable of making pretty fantastic whisky, but this 12-year-old expression was a bit soft and flat, and I'm not sure if I'm going to miss it or not. So you know that thing that you do when you're wondering whether or not you're going to continue a relationship, and you kind of go back for a kind of last minute thing? Good. But nah, 7.5 out of 10. So given that this is my 5th recycled review in probably about, 14 months or something like that, that's probably running me a little bit more than a bottle of whisky getting killed every week. I would just like to point out there that I do share my whisky, I share it a lot. But I'm wondering, does it make me a little bit whisky promiscuous? Till next time.